What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, live to rank some wide receivers. We are tier ranking the top 50 wide receivers in the NFL today. I wanted to create this tier list, but add a little bit of flexibility to it and add a little bit of padding, because later in the offseason I will be ranking the top 32 receivers in the NFL. But I want to add some names that potentially won't make that list, some guys that typically I won't be discussing as the top receivers in the game. So I've decided on the round number and the great number and the phenomenal number of 50 wide receivers that I will tier rank from solid wide receiver twos all the way up till game changers in the NFL. If that sounds fun, if that sounds good, I know you guys have been waiting and anticipating and wanting this tier list. Don't forget to spike that like button if you want to see more tier lists just like this. Spike the like button. Let's try to get this video to 100 likes and I will make another one of these tier lists. You can also spike that notification bell to stay up to date with the latest upload here on the channel and to be notified when I go live just like this. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can at TheBottomLineView. You can follow me at Mitch Milani, M-I-L-A-N-I on Twitter. All the links for our social medias are in the description. And also, if you are here live, let me know and play along with me. As I'm ranking these wide receivers, play along in the chat and give me your ranking according to which tier you would put which player in for this video. Also want to give a shout out to Nicholas Gill, who's been wanting me to do this video for weeks. So shout out to him. I'm getting it done. All right, let's share the screen. I actually had to, again, make this tier list because I guess I'm just out in front of everybody right now. The people got to catch up, bro. They got to catch up, okay? But we're here, and I've created my own tier list. I narrowed it down to the receivers that I feel are the 50 greatest receivers in the game today and the 50 best receivers in the game today. So as you can see, we have all of them here at the bottom of the screen. I put the link as well. I'll put it in the comment section below, and then I'll also link it in the description if you want to play along, if you want to make your own tier list. You can also send it to me on social media. You could send it to me on Discord. And if you're not already in the Discord community, also check out our Discord. Okay, let's say hello to people in the chat before we begin here. What's going on, Nicholas Gill, Steeler Nation, New York Phenom, basketball and football moments? What's going on, guys? Isaac is asking about Braxton Berrios, who he says is S++. And I will say that Braxton Berrios would be S++ for his Instagram game. Thomas is also saying that AB is still top 10 or so, but I have not included AB on this list as he is a free agent. I'm not sure or aware if he's going to be playing this year, so I just didn't include him on the list. Okay, what's going on, everybody? Nice to see you. Let's get started. Okay, so these categories here, game changer. So game changers are the guys that defenses have to game plan around. These are the guys that defenses stay up late at night. They have nightmares about these wide receivers. You have to double them on every snap, every big play. You got to be aware where they are on the field. Are they in the slot? Are they on the left? Are they on the right? Who's covering them? You got to figure out a game plan to stop these players. That is a game-changing wide receiver in my opinion. An elite number one is not quite the terror that these other guys are in the game changer category, but they are very, very good players that will change a game, and I just don't think have that game plan nature the way that these guys do, or they don't change a game in an instant, or they can't, absolutely tear apart a defense the way that the game changers can, but they're really darn good players, okay? Good number one is like, you would be happy with this guy as your number one receiver. Like, if he's your number one receiver on your team, he is a really good player and you're happy, but he's not like one of the best receivers in the NFL. Low-end wide receiver 1 is you would be okay with him as your number 1, but you would rather have somebody else. You know, you want to see a little bit of an upgrade. Maybe you need a good number 2 to go along with him sort of deal. So that's a low-end number 1 wide receiver. A wide receiver 2 with upside is potentially a younger wide receiver that hasn't proven it in his game yet that he is a number 1, or he's somebody that I view to have a lot of upside to be able to become a number 1 one day, or somebody that maybe he's inconsistent, but he shows up every once in a while and showcases number 1 ability. And then the solid wide receiver 2 is just a pretty much career wide receiver 2. Like, they're probably guys that have been steady for a number of seasons, have been productive for a number of seasons, and obviously, guys, when you do the math, these are the top 50 wide receivers in the game, so there are no number 3 receivers here, because when you think about it, the top 32 receivers are all number 1 receivers, and then after that, you go through to the top 64, which would be the number 2 receivers in the game, so we're about halfway through the number 2 wide receiver sort of deal, or at the lower half there of the number 2s. So the top 50, they're all at least number 2 receivers in the NFL. Now, in terms of my list, is Calvin Ridley on it? No, he is not, because he's not playing this season. And also, is Julio on this? I did not include Julio either. That was more of a personal choice because of his inconsistencies with injuries. But you could include him if you feel like he's a top 50. You could always just add him to the tier list yourself. So let's get to it. Game changers, elite, good wide receiver 1, low-end wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 with upside, and solid wide receiver 2. Okay, we're going to begin here with Allen Robinson, which is one of the trickier ones to begin with because I feel like 2 years ago and the last 2 seasons, I would say, in terms of 2019 and 2020, he would be viewed as a good number 1 receiver or possibly even an elite number 1 receiver. But last year, he significantly fell off a cliff. So Allen Robinson is tricky. I could see people thinking he's better than he is. I could see people underrating him as well. I'm going to say Allen Robinson is at this point, a wide receiver. It's between low-end wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2 with upside. That's kind of how I feel about it. I'm in between here. I'm trying to figure this out in my head. Obviously, in LA, he's going to not be the number 1 receiver. He's going to be probably the number 2, unless OBJ comes around there, and then maybe he's fighting for the number 2. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in low-end number 1. And the reason I'll give him the benefit of the doubt is he was in a bad offense, and he had to switch quarterbacks constantly throughout the year. And really, this was his only season of showing regression. So I'm not going to fully say yet that he's out of that number 1 conversation. So Allen Robinson is a receiver that I think could still play at a pretty high level. And I'm not willing to say he has significantly fallen off to the point where he's no longer a top 32 receiver in the NFL. He's shown enough production over the last few years. He's not quite super old yet. And he's dealt with injuries in his career, but really not lately. So to me, he's still a good route runner. He could still make a lot of great contested catches. Good hands, good height, all of that stuff. Very crafty. He's just not super explosive or anything like that, but he can kind of do a little bit of everything at a high level, play in the slot, play outside, be a possession receiver for you. But I think in a better offense with a better quarterback, you're going to see him sort of have a similar resurgence to Odell, I think, but maybe just not have that explosive ability. But I think he actually really, really fits with the Rams. I think that's a great fit for him on the outside to complement Cooper Kupp. Next, we've got Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne is interesting because last year he showed his most promising signs to becoming the Patriots' go-to target. So Kendrick Bourne is really somebody that I loved last year, and I loved his fit in New England. He instantly became one of the fan favorites of the Patriots fandom there, Pats Nation, because of his attitude and because of his rapport with Mac Jones. He seems to be somebody trending in the right direction towards becoming potentially a number 1 receiver, but he's in a very crowded wide receiving core. with Jacoby Myers and Devontae Parker and Nelson Aguilar. So I view him I feel like if there was less crowded nature to the receiver room in New England, he would be somebody that maybe you put him in the low end wide receiver 1 and you're taking a shot. But I feel like Kendrick Bourne is somebody that I could see having his best season of his career this year, so I'm going to put him with the number 2 with upside because I see him being maybe the lead horse in that crowded room of Patriots receivers because of the rapport and the explosiveness he's shown with Mac Jones. So Kendrick Bourne is a wide receiver 2 with upside for me. Mike Williams is somebody that just got paid. Big time red zone threat, big time down the field receiver, and probably one of the more inconsistent receivers in terms of wide receiver 1 production, but he's certainly shown wide receiver 1 production throughout a couple of years in his career. Last year was by far his most consistent, best season of his career with Justin Herbert, and he got paid for it. You guys know that I'm not the biggest Mike Williams fan because he does rely a ton on contested catches and he doesn't really separate a ton in his routes, but he is really good at what he does, so I've got to give him that. I think he's a great fit with Justin Herbert. I'm going to say that Mike Williams is between good wide receiver 1 and low-end wide receiver 1. I'm going to put him in the low-end wide receiver 1 conversation. That's just me personally. I could see people putting maybe a little bit higher, but that's where I've got him. I think I need to see one more season before I fully put him into that like top 25 sort of conversation, but I do think he's a top 32 receiver. Cooper Kupp is kind of obvious. He had like an all-time record-setting season this past year. He's arguably, if not arguably, the best receiver in the NFL. I think Cooper Kupp is obviously a low-end wide receiver 1. No, I'm just kidding. Cooper Kupp is a game changer, absolutely, without a doubt. He proved it in the biggest stage of the playoffs and the Super Bowl. He was ridiculous versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and really uncoverable for the entire 2021 NFL season. So Cooper Kupp is a game changer for me, absolutely. You could argue he's the best receiver in the NFL. Justin Jefferson is next, which is very interesting because I think some people would argue Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson are the best receiver in the NFL. So you know where I'm going with this. Obviously, he is a game changer. Justin Jefferson is, for me, potentially the best receiver in the NFL. I'd really like to see how he operates in this Kevin O'Connell offense this year. I think they're going to pass more. I think that's going to lead to more receptions and overall more production for Justin Jefferson. Not to say he hasn't been productive already, but he hasn't seen quite the targets or the passing volume in his offense that somebody like Cooper Kupp has. But I think Justin Jefferson is the ultimate receiver in today's age. He's a great route runner. He's super explosive. He can make contested grabs. He's versatile. He's electric, all of it. So he is a game changer for me, absolutely. Now we've got T. Higgins. Ooh, this is tough because obviously he's the number 2 receiver on his team, but I feel like T. Higgins, some people would have looked at him as the number 1 before last year. Like before Jamar Chase came around, I think a lot of people were considering T. Higgins as a number 1 receiver, and I think there's certainly an argument that he still is a number 1 receiver. He's just alongside another number 1 receiver. So I feel like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are both number 1 receivers. I feel like they have 2 number 1 receivers on the Bengals. So I'm going to put T. Higgins alongside Mike Williams and Allen Robinson. I feel like they're kind of in that same tier. He's another guy that's very much a contested receiver, contested catch receiver, kind of like Mike Williams, but I do think he has more wiggle and better route running ability than somebody like Mike Williams. He just doesn't have the size. And he does kind of go about his business under the radar. He's not somebody that's super flashy, but he's productive, and I think he's only getting better. So I'd put him in the low end wide receiver 1 conversation. Terry McLaurin is next, who I felt like did have an underwhelming season last year, but a lot of that been throughout his career has been because of obviously quarterback play, where the quarterback play has been pretty crappy and trash, honestly. But I feel like just from fantasy circles, like Terry McLaurin has always been expected to take the next step statistically, and he hasn't able to get there yet. But in terms of just a wide receiver, like in real life production, Terry McLaurin is fast. We know that. Very good route runner. I feel like he could be an excellent X receiver, which he is in Washington, or you could put him as a Z receiver, and he has the skill set to kind of do that stuff in terms of the short intermediate route running, but he also has the downfield to be able to do that as well. He's not like Mike Williams or T. Higgins where they can go up and grab it over top of you, but he's more so of a burner type. I'm going to put Terry McLaurin into the good number one wide receiver column, so that's going to be the first receiver that goes in that one, in that tier, because I just think he's better at separating, better at route running, and because he's really the only receiver on his team that demands attention, I think it's worth putting him in that tier, or he's earned that tier, I should say. DJ Moore is next, and DJ Moore is kind of similar to Terry McLaurin, I feel. Like, they're both fast, dynamic receivers. DJ Moore, I think his production has gone under the radar in terms of just what he's done, like, period, like his stats. Like, overall, I don't think people realize what DJ Moore has been able to do throughout his career without a good quarterback for the first couple of seasons. Really good with the ball in his hands. Really good athlete overall. I'm not sure what he would look like with a good quarterback. I'd really like to see that, to be honest with you. Personally, I'm a fan of DJ Moore. I don't think he gets enough respect for what he is. I'm going to put him into the good wide receiver one column. Now we've got Keenan Allen, who I think is somebody that has become so underrated that he's overrated. Like, Keenan Allen is somebody that I thought was underrated, didn't get enough appreciation about 3 or 4 years ago. And just the way the NFL takes kind of scene goes, and it just feels like Keenan Allen has become overrated because he's an excellent short route runner, great possession receiver, great slot receiver, and he's even good in contested catch situations, but he's not an electric game-changing receiver that teams constantly look to double team or take away, and so he's not a shift the coverage type of guy. You'll often just see teams put a number one corner on Keenan Allen and kind of call it a day. I do think he's sort of declined a little bit from where he was 1 or 2 years ago, where he was a top 10 receiver. I think he's in the top 20 probably, but I don't put him no longer in the top 10. So I think he is in the good number one wide receiver column. I think he might be a little bit overrated. That's just my opinion. Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is, I think, starting to get a little bit more appreciation because he was able to remain productive with Davis Mills as his quarterback. You know, before last year, he really was in a good situation quarterback-wise for every season of his career, or offense-wise, I should say, right? He was in New Orleans. He was in New England. He was with the Rams and McVay, and even though Goff isn't the greatest, he was with that offense. A lot of times, though, a lot of mouths to feed in other offenses that he played in, you know. So Cooks has always had to deal with being kind of like a 1A or 1B to another player. I do think Brandon Cooks is just unbelievable for his consistent production and his ability to just always produce. No matter the situation, no matter the quarterback, no matter the offense, he's picked up numerous offenses and remained productive. He's still got top-end speed. Maybe it's not quite where it was before, but he's a really, really good route runner, and I just don't think he gets enough appreciation. I think Brandon Cooks is also going to go, I'm between good and low-end wide receiver one. Something also to consider, like stats-wise, is that he does get spammed a lot, so that also does help his numbers. So I'm going to say he's he's kind of weird because I feel like sometimes he's a good wide receiver 1 and sometimes he's a low-end wide receiver 1. I'm going to put him in low end just because of his age, but it's close. It's definitely close. CeeDee Lamb is next. CeeDee Lamb is going to be my first receiver that goes into the elite column. So CeeDee Lamb isn't quite the best of the best, but he's kind of in that second tier of guys. What I like about CeeDee Lamb is really explosive. Really, really great combination of both vertical speed and kind of horizontal quickness. So he can beat you out of the slot. He can beat you vertically outside. He can take the ball and go with it and make a move and make you miss and go to the house. He's really good after the catch. Like, he's basically got everything you want in a number 1 receiver. But I have yet to see him play opposite a bad receiver. Like, I've never seen CeeDee Lamb yet. He's only played in the league for 2 years. I haven't seen him play without another good receiver on his team. So that's the only thing I can really say is just in terms of attention. That's how I feel about CeeDee Lamb. But CeeDee Lamb is really good. And I think, yeah, he's a cowboy. He might get a little overhyped because of that, but I think the hype is definitely warranted. He's super talented. Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool bugs me because physically, he's one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. Mentally, he has issues, and we know that. But he's a great contested catch guy, kind of a sloppy route runner sometimes. But he has inconsistent production. I will say that Claypool has kind of been unlucky because he's been with a quarterback that no longer could throw the ball down the field. So I feel like Claypool was kind of put in a bad spot. Like, Deontay Johnson was somebody that benefited from Ben Roethlisberger the last couple of years because Ben was really good at just throwing those 10-yard passes, 5-yard passes. But Claypool is somebody that can really take the top off a defense and stretch the defense more than I think people give him credit for. And he's a monster because he's so big and he's physical. I think for now, I'm going to put him in the number 2 with upside, but I could certainly see Claypool having his best seasons ahead of him because I don't think he's been given a fair shake in terms of just the offense and how the offense has utilized him and the quarterback as well. So I'm going to put Claypool into number 2 with upside. Deontay Johnson has proven more. He's been statistically more productive. I think he is a more consistent route runner. And he gets open more, and he's just more consistent. Now, he has had drop issues in the past, but that seemed to be better last year, I think. But I don't view Deontay Johnson as like a game-changing player, but I do think he's a really solid, like, you'd be happy with him as your number 1 receiver. So the way I view Deontay Johnson is like these other guys here in the good wide receiver 1 conversation, where if he's your number 1 receiver, you like it. He's going to be productive. He's going to catch a bunch of balls. He'll move the chains, but he's not going to be a super big play, game-changing type player. So I'll put him in the good wide receiver 1 tier. Darnell Mooney is next. Darnell Mooney is kind of like I feel like he's kind of like a Walmart Deontay Johnson a little bit. He's got maybe more vertical ability, but he's maybe less refined in other areas. But Darnell Mooney is really electric. I could see him upping his game again this year. I'm intrigued to see how him and Justin Fields continue to grow together, which is one of the only upsides to this season for the Bears because I think they're going to be terrible. But you're going to see plenty of that connection. I also think Mooney is a perfect fit for Fields with how he is vertically down the field, how he makes plays. I think Darnell Mooney is really intriguing. I definitely think last year he proved he's more than a number 2 receiver, though. So I kind of feel like he's going to low-end number 1. He's sort of like a Brandon Cooks to me right now. I don't know if he'll ever be better than that, though. So I'm going to go with low-end number 1. Robert Woods is next. Robert Woods is really tough because he obviously got hurt last year. So you're sort of trying to project how Robert Woods is going to be in the future. And on a new team as well with a new quarterback, he doesn't have that rapport built in. He's away from Sean McVay. And really, Robert Woods kind of made a massive jump when he went from Buffalo to the Rams, and he kind of became a different player. He's getting older, but you can't also disrespect what he's been able to do in the past, too. He's really tough. He does the little things well. He's infamously known from Troy Aikman to be the best, most complete receiver with his blocking ability. But he is good after the catch. He's a tough guy in the middle of the field, makes a number of clutch grabs for his team. I think he's a number 2, but I think I'm going to put him in the upside just because we've seen him sort of be a number 1 in the past, like a low-end number 1. So I'm going to still categorize him as a number 2 with upside just because he's shown that in the past. But I'm not sure if he's trending towards, his best years are behind him sort of deal, which I think that might be the case. So Robert Woods is number 2 with upside. Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is tough because I've never been the biggest Gabe Davis fan, but he came on. He's always shown flashes of high-end ability, and the way that his teammates hype him up and talk about him, it's definitely really intriguing to be really excited about Gabe Davis as the number 2 opposite Stephon Diggs. I feel like Gabe Davis, I just don't really know if I know enough about him yet. Like, I've seen him play a lot, but he's never really been truly trusted as their number 2 receiver, honestly. Like, I kind of feel like just based on that Chiefs game alone, he's a number 2 with upside. Like, I think it would be unfair for me to say that somebody like Kendrick Bourne is one and then not Gabe Davis. So I'm going to put him in the upside combo because he's still young. Michael Gallup. So Michael Gallup has been productive, but he's never really truly been a number 1 receiver. He was the number 3 last year. But he was hurt last year a lot. He's really good at stretching the field and beating teams down the field, and he's really good at that. Like, I think he's better than, I think, CD at that, honestly. And he's a decent route runner. He's not great after the catch. It's a place where he struggles, and it's really injuries that have kind of held him back, to be honest. I'm going to say that Michael Gallup is a solid wide receiver, too. Like, I think you're really happy with Michael Gallup as your number 2 receiver, but I don't think he's ever shown, and I think that time has sort of passed for him to become a number 1. Like, I think his window of potential has passed by. Like, that's kind of how I feel. Like, I think he's a really good player, but I think he'll always be a number 2 receiver. Like, I don't think he's ever going to have that upside to be a number 1 at any point. So I'm going to put Michael Gallup into solid wide receiver 2. I could see people feeling differently, but that's where I'll place him. Tyreek Hill is next. Tyreek Hill is obviously a game changer and arguably the ultimate game changer for his home run ability, whether it's down the field or just yards after catch. Tyreek Hill, electric player. I don't got to say much more. He's proven it year after year in the biggest of games. Now, what will he be in Miami? That's an interesting question. A lot of that comes down to his rapport and Tua's ability to get him the ball. But I think that Tua can do enough. He could get Tyreek the ball a little bit. So I think he'll still remain a game changer. But I'm trying to evaluate them individually, so obviously he's still a game changer. Jalen Waddle is right after him. Jalen Waddle is maybe not given the respect he deserves because he is still super young, but just based on his rookie season, I think he showed enough to be placed into the number 1 wide receiver conversation, even though he'll be the number 2 next to Tyreek Hill. Obviously, teams will definitely be covering Tyreek Hill and placing their attention on Tyreek Hill, but I don't think that takes away Jalen Waddle's ability, especially in the RPO game the yards after catch he gives, his suddenness off the line, his quickness, just, I think, is game-changing. So I'm going to put Jalen Waddle into the... I'm honestly between the low end and the good receiver one. Like, I honestly think this might be a little high, but I'm going to push it to the good wide receiver one conversation. Like, I think he's really that good, okay? And I just made a video about hating on the Dolphins, but, you know, Tua's got himself 2 good receiver ones there in Miami. Juju is next. Juju is going to go into solid wide receiver 1, and this is the least I've had to think about anything here. So Juju is a wide receiver 2, obviously. He's never proven that he can be a number 1. I think he'll always remain a number 2. He's a good possession receiver. He's tough. He can create yards after catch through his ability to break tackles. Good slot receiver, though. He's limited on the outside, so his deficiencies clearly bump him down into the wide receiver 2 conversation. Davante Adams is next. Davante Adams is one of the best, if not the best receiver in the NFL. Game changer, best releases in the game, still arguably the best route runner in the NFL. And although he doesn't have Tyreek Hill's speed, he's phenomenal. Now I want to see what Adams can do with Derek Carr. Obviously they have familiarity from their college days, but will it be the same as Aaron Rodgers? Because I felt like a lot of what Davante Adams was able to do was just the ability to remain in sync with Davante Adams was just unbelievable. Like Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers were an unbelievable combination. It was almost like twin telepathy. They knew where each other was going to be. It was unreal. So that might hinder his production a little bit, but that doesn't take away his impact. Hunter Renfrow. Now, I saw a conversation on Twitter earlier today talking about the best route runners in the NFL. And Hunter Renfrow commonly came up, and this is something I'll say about Hunter Renfrow. I think you could argue that Hunter Renfrow is the best route runner in the NFL because he gets open a ton despite having very limited physical ability. So to be able to get open as much as he does, lacking the speed and quickness that a lot of these other guys have, I think is insanely impressive. I definitely think he's the best short area receiver right now, just in terms of his route running. Third and Renfrow. I'm going to put him into the... This is tough. I could see you being low-end wide receiver 1, but... I'm going to say Renfrow is actually a low-end wide receiver 1. Like, I think if Renfrow, like last year, he was the wide receiver 1 for the Raiders last year. Darren Waller, wasn't really that guy. So I'm going to put him in low-end wide receiver 1. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but more in the slot sense. Kenny Golladay is really tough because he's just a guy that gets hurt a lot. I'm going to say Kenny Golladay is a wide receiver 2 with upside because obviously he's shown top 20, even sometimes top 10 upside. But I wonder how much of that was his chemistry with Matthew Stafford. And watching him in New York, he just didn't get the opportunity to make plays down the field. So I'm hoping to see him get that opportunity this year. The Giants were a very conservative passing game, and Kenny Golladay is somebody that needs to be thrown the ball. He needs to be trusted in those one-on-one situations to make plays. I certainly think he has the upside to be a number 1 receiver still, but I think his injuries and his inconsistencies and my unfamiliarity with how he'll perform in New York puts him into the wide receiver 2 with upside conversation. Kadarius Toney. Now, Kadarius Toney has immense potential. I think he has borderline elite number 1 potential with his just unbelievable ability to make people miss, and he's already one of the best yak receivers in the NFL, although we saw it in a limited sample size. So that's really what holds him back. In terms of the tools, he's in that wide receiver 1 conversation, but his production has not yet matched that yet. So I'm going to put him into the wide receiver 2 with upside conversation because he is one of the most electric ball carriers in the NFL. He's got just great feet to run routes, and I think he'll have a huge season this year. So I'm going to put him in that category. St. Brown from the Detroit Lions, the lone Lions receiver here on the list. So I'm going to put him in the solid number 2, and this is why. I don't think he's ever going to be more than that. Like, I think he is a really, really solid number 2 receiver. Like you want this guy for the next 5 to 10 years to be your number 2 receiver. But I don't think he's a number 1. I don't think he'll ever be your number 1, mostly because of his size. And he lacks a lot of athletic traits that you would like to see from your number 1 receiver. But he's sort of like Hunter Renfrow light to me. So that's why I'll put him in the solid wide receiver 2 conversation. Adam Thielen is real tough. Obviously, he's been a number 1 in the past, but he has shown age and obviously some injuries that hurt his availability. But when he plays, he's still really darn good. So that makes it tough. I'll put Adam Thielen into... I'm kind of considering low end or good wide receiver 1. I think I'll put him in low end just because of his age, the potential for regression. So I'll put him in that conversation as well. Robbie Anderson is next. Robbie Anderson has definitely flashed wide receiver 1 ability last year with over 1,000 yards and a ton of touchdowns and catches. But last year he dealt with his boy Sam Darnold, who was throwing the ball better to the other team. And I think a lot of frustration came from that. I think people are sleeping on Robbie a little bit. You know, a lot of people have been shredding him. I think Robbie Anderson still can play. He's still got speed. He's proven that he can do a little bit of everything, you know, underneath and over the top ability. I think Robbie Anderson is still a wide receiver 2 with ups. No, you know, he's kind of like at that. I'm gonna call him. He's between wide receiver 2 with upside and solid wide receiver 2. I'll put him solid wide receiver 2, just because of his fall last year. I think he only had like 600 yards. Which definitely hurts him moving forward. But that season 2 years ago was so good, man. Michael Thomas is next. Michael Thomas, we haven't seen him play in 2 years, so who knows what he's going to be. I don't think he's the game changer category for sure. You could maybe make an argument for elite wide receiver 1 category based on his production in the past. But again, I haven't seen him play in so long, and the last time I saw him play was with Drew Brees. He's dealt with a lot of drama off the field, so that's also kind of hurt the way that you think about him as well, at least in my opinion. But I think given his production that we've seen in the past, he is somebody that can kind of be the lone good receiver on his team and be successful. He's a constant chain mover type receiver, very physical, tough. I'm going to put him into the elite category, but I don't think he deserves to be game changer. Mike Evans is next. Mike Evans is still, for whatever reason, underrated. He's a Hall of Fame player and obviously showed versus Jalen Ramsey that he still is a absolute monster to cover one-on-one. Amazing player. Great at really everything, to be honest with you. Have no real complaints with his game. His availability is super consistent. Mike Evans is a elite number 1 receiver. Jamar Chase is next. Jamar Chase is going to go... He's obviously in the top 2. Now, he had an amazing rookie season. He was the best downfield receiver in the NFL last year. Immediately upgrade the Cincinnati Bengals. Made them a Super Bowl team in a way, right? He took them from him being on the team was such a big deal. He really allowed them to break out. He's great after the catch. He's great with the ball in the air. He's great down the field. He's not a great route runner, but he doesn't need to be because he's so physically special. I think he's a game changer. Next, we've got Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin is arguably the best slot receiver in the NFL because he does play primarily in the slot position. He is a tough player. He's great after the catch. He's got strong hands, but his hands I don't think are as consistent as somebody like Mike Evans. He's not that great down the field, but he is really special short and intermediate, and he is really important to what the Bucs do as a receiver, a blocker, as a runner. He does a lot of different things for them. I think Chris Godwin is a elite receiver. DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is also pretty easily a elite receiver. He's been doing it for a long time. He's been productive for a long time. Great hands, great contested ability. Still one of the best in that regard. Underrated route runner, in my opinion. Not super explosive, but just somebody that if you need third and 8, throw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins. He'll probably get it for you. Now we've got Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is interesting. I think people will put him in the game changer category. I think people would put him in the elite category. I kind of feel like Deebo is a special player that's hard to categorize because he does so much for the 49ers in terms of his versatility to be a running back, to be a receiver, to be a slot receiver, to be an explosive yak player, but he's also in a really good position in a really good offense where it's a great scheme that utilizes him to his utmost potential. And he's definitely not like the best receiver in the sense of a traditional receiver, but what he can do as a well-rounded player is special. So I think Deebo, based on last year, he is a game changer. Devontae Smith is actually somebody I forgot about. So, yeah. Forgot about Devontae Smith. So, slipped my mind. But Devontae Smith would be probably wide receiver 2 with upside, if anyone's curious about that. Brandon Ayuk is next. I do think he's a top 50 receiver. Not top 32, though. Brandon Ayuk is somebody that's flashed potential. His rookie season was really good, where he was really the number 1 for the Niners. And then last year, he was inconsistent. He started the year in the doghouse. I still think he's got phenomenal physical traits, speed, height, strength, but he is still a little bit raw, as you can see. And also, he's in an offense where it doesn't really feature the X receiver. He's kind of like an X receiver in an offense that doesn't use that position. They more so use the tight end, their running backs, the slot. So he's in really the third in chain of command, sort of. So I feel like he is a wide receiver 2 with upside, and I honestly feel like his production would be better on a different team. So I put him in that category. DK Metcalf is next. Ooh, he's tough because last year, obviously, his numbers slipped. You saw some of his anger come out. But the year before was dominant. He was one of the best, most explosive players in the NFL. Still good last year, but just more inconsistent. Obviously, Russell's injury had something to do with that. He is physically unlike any other receiver in the NFL with his strength and his speed combination that is just extremely rare. I think DK Metcalf is a good wide receiver 1. I definitely lowered him in terms of my thought just because of his inconsistencies a year ago. We'll see how he functions with a new quarterback. That's going to be real tough. And he's honestly been on the trade block, so we'll see if he gets traded as well. Then we've got Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is really good player. I don't think he's ever been an elite receiver, but he's been a really productive, good receiver for a while now. I want to say 3 or 4 years. And he's mostly played out of the slot. He's got really good speed, pretty good route runner, really consistent, but oftentimes he's thrived off of Russell Wilson's ability to extend the play and make plays, and the improvisation has been a big part of Tyler Lockett's success. I think Tyler Lockett is going to go into the low-end wide receiver 1. I am very interested to see how his production changes without Russell Wilson. Tyler Boyd, he's not a number 1. He's probably a pretty solid number 2, and probably he's shown like he's produced over 1,000 in his career before. But he's clearly the third best receiver on his team. And obviously his targets have changed because of the other players around him. I think if he was in another situation, he'd still be able to put up like 90 catches in a year. I think Tyler Boyd is a wide receiver 2 with upside. Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown had his best season last year for sure. Showed another step forward in his progression. Obviously has the speed. He's been getting better as a route runner, but his size and physicality have definitely hurt him. I've always wondered why the Ravens haven't used him more in the slot than they have. Typically, they use him a lot on the outside, which I've never really understood because he's kind of more built for the slot, but I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for because people just remember his rookie season. I think he is a... This is tough. I want to make sure I've got decent numbers here. He's between low-end wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 with upside. I think he's pretty similar to Tyler Lockett, honestly. This might be bold. I'm going to put him into low-end wide receiver 1. I am. Michael Pittman is next. Maybe I'll adjust them so that I've got 32 in the number 1s probably after, but let's just keep going here. All right, Michael Pittman is next. He is interesting because he flashed number 1 last year where he was getting a ton of targets for the Colts. He's their number 1 receiver, but is he a number 1 talent? I don't know. Physically strong, good hands, good possession receiver, not super dangerous. I think he's also a wide receiver 2 with upside. But I feel like he's always going to kind of remain that. I don't know if he's ever going to be better than that. Christian Kirk, to me, is a solid number 2 receiver. He's a nice slot receiver. It's got, obviously, I've said it many times, but he's kind of rare in terms of he's got the vertical speed to beat you down the field from that position, but he is really inconsistent. So that kind of holds me back from putting him into the upside wide receiver 1 type conversation. He's more of a wide receiver 2 because like he'll flash some big games now and again, but he'll also disappear. So he's a wide receiver 2. A.J. Brown is next. A.J. Brown did not have the best year last year due to injuries, but he's pretty darn good. He is a physical beast. He's very tough, great hands, can be a lot to handle at times. Teams just sometimes don't have a matchup to cover him because he's so big, so strong, and got great explosiveness to create after the catch. I think A.J. Brown is an elite player, so I'm going to put him into the elite wide receiver 1 conversation. Courtland Sutton is next. Courtland Sutton is tough to judge because of his quarterback conversation. Courtland Sutton has flashed wide receiver 1, but is mostly produced like a wide receiver 2. And even at times has been, the second or third best receiver on his team. I think his injuries have significantly hurt his ability, but I do think he's going to get a lot better with Russell Wilson there because I think Russell Wilson will unlock his downfield ability that we once saw him earlier in his career. I'm going to say that Courtland Sutton is a wide receiver 2 with upside. Stephon Diggs is next. Stephon Diggs is obviously an elite receiver. I don't think he's a game changer, though. I don't think he's quite on that level. I think he's a little bit below that. Really good route runner in terms of all facets. Short, intermediate, vertical. But I've seen him be taken away a little bit more than other guys. And I do think that their offense doesn't really flow through him the same way I feel like that these other guys do. And last year maybe was just a little bit sour in terms of he didn't produce at that rate that I thought he was going to. So maybe that's kind of like a production thing for me. But he's a really good player and really tough to cover. And somebody that's going to pretty much consistently have like 5-6 catches a game at the very least because he's just a really, really good route runner and's got a really good rapport with Josh Allen. But I'll put him in the elite. Jerry Jeudy has been overhyped since day one. I love his ability to run routes, especially short and intermediate from the slot. But he doesn't have a lot of explosive ability with the ball or without the ball. He's not going to burn you down the field. He's kind of a technician. I think we're going to see his best season this year. I think he's a wide receiver 2 with upside along with Courtland Sutton. Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick's like a solid wide receiver 2 to me. He's got some really good contested ability. Really like savvy player. Can make a lot of explosive plays for that offense and is oftentimes filled in for Courtland Sutton when he's been hurt. So I think he's a solid wide receiver 2. Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has the ability of an elite player, but has the mindset of a wide receiver 2. And that definitely hurts him in my mind. Very inconsistent at times, but season to season, statistically productive and consistent. So he's inconsistent week to week, but it's almost because he's super productive in one week and kind of disappears in other games. And the biggest thing I don't like about him is that he doesn't produce in the biggest of games. Kind of shies away from that. But like I said, great route runner, explosive player still. So he's been productive enough to still remain in the number 1 conversation. Do I put him in the low end or the good? I'm going to put him in. That's tough, actually. I'll put him in the good. I think CD is better, though. Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is a solid wide receiver, too. Really good slot possession player. Not explosive. Not fast. But very reliable. Tough. And I think like he's a perfect high-end wide receiver 3. And if he is your wide receiver 2, you would want to have a elite wide receiver 1. But he has been at times the number 1 target in New England's offense. But I think physically he's limited to be that type of guy. So Jacoby is that guy on wide receiver 2. Marvin Jones is a solid wide receiver 2 to me. I think he's declined a little bit, but he still flashes that wide receiver 1 type upside where you remember if you've played fantasy for years, he's always flashed like 2-3 touchdown games. He's had that type of upside with his red zone ability, contested catches, down the field ability, is an explosive element to any offense, but unreliable. Devontae Parker has the talent of a elite receiver, but has the availability of a wide receiver 8. So that is definitely challenging to rank him. He'll probably play 8 games this year. I think Devontae Parker is going to have some success, and I think he's going to help Mac Jones quite a bit. Again, it's got the speed, got the height, got the size. Good route runner for his size, and has flashed elite ability. I'm going to put him into the wide receiver 2. This is tough. Like, is he a wide receiver 2 with upside? I would say so because he's shown enough upside in his career that he can be a number 1. And then we've got Corey Davis, who is the number 1 for the Jets, but is he going to be a number 1 really anywhere is the question. I don't know if he'll ever be a number 1 receiver. He's never been a number 1 receiver. He's never really produced like a number 1 receiver. That one Titan season was close, but he was really the number 2, benefiting from A.J. Brown. I think he's, at this point, just is what he is. I think he's a solid wide receiver 2. And Russell Gage is without a doubt a wide receiver 2, who is basically a wide receiver 3 now. He is a wide receiver 3. But he's a wide receiver 2 on a majority of teams, so you'd put him there. So that is my tier list right there. let's check out if I have 32 receivers in the number 1, and then I'll figure that out. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the game changer category. Then we've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So a 7 in the elite. And then in the good, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So it looks like I'm missing 3 receivers to be in the wide receiver 1 conversation. So this is where you guys get to play along if you like. I've got to move 3 receivers into the wide receiver 1 conversation. So what I'm going to do here is... Ooh, this is tough. I'm going to put... That is really tough, actually. I'm going to put Michael Pittman as one of them. I'm going to put... Do I put Kenny Golladay? Move up Higgins, they say. Why? I don't think he deserves to be moved up. Maybe. I don't know, though. What do you guys think? Nicholas Gill says move up Pittman, Woods, and Claypool. I don't think Woods just because of his age. I'm going to put Judy because of the potential breakout season coming. And I'll put Golladay just because of his past production. So that's what I've got. That's what I've got. All right, guys. That is my tier list right there. I'm going to take a picture, post it on Instagram for you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to spike that like button for more NFL tier lists just like this. Let's try to get to 100 likes. If you haven't spiked the like button, please do. Let's try to get to 100 likes. If we get to 100 likes, I will come out with another tier list here on the channel. And of course, we'll have the full in-depth rankings later in the offseason where I actually rank every receiver in order and then give you my thoughts on each player and why I rank them that way. Go check out the rest of the content on the channel. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you all for joining me. Peace.